The following is a story about why it's always a good idea to speak up when one witnesses injustice and or scandalous behavior. Hey, I get it, folks. There's just so much corruption out there, and yet nothing ever seems to happen. Indeed, what's the point in being a whistleblower in Justin Trudeau's Canada, in which scandal is so de rigueur and nothing ever seems to get done in a positive sense? But while the authorities frequently turn a blind eye and a deaf ear to various shenanigans, well, not always. Case in point, you might recall that last year a whistleblower reached out to Rebel News regarding a woke trustee at the Waterloo Catholic District School Board. Now, it's one thing to be woke and committed to DEI and all that other rubbish, but it's quite another to be caught in an alleged conflict of interest, especially a conflict of interest that results in personal financial enrichment. Now, I speak of trustee Kathy Doherty Masters. You see, she had hired someone by the name of Fred Masters. Mr. Masters runs a company called Masters Money Management, Inc. Fred Masters was awarded with the following 3 contracts. One was for $2,200 in exchange for 100 autographed copies of his book, Lessons on Mastering Money. Secondly, Mr. Masters was given a speaker's fee of $1,400, courtesy of the board, aka the taxpayer. And Mr. Masters was also paid a stipend of $800 to conduct a financial wellness presentation. Well, that's just Jim Dandy, and we're sure Mr. Masters is a fine money manager and author. But you know, it's that surname of his. Is there any connection between Fred Masters and Kathy Doherty Masters? Yeah, turns out they're a married couple. And being in such a personal relationship puts this dynamic duo in an inherent conflict of interest. And while Kathy Doherty Masters should have recused herself from approving agenda minutes, especially in regard to financial decisions made by the board that would directly enrich her hubby, she chose not to do so. Oops. Rather, she made certain that taxpayers' money went right into hubby's wallet. You know, I haven't read Lessons on Mastering Money, but I have a strong hunch that one of those lessons might be this: ensure you have a relative in the public sector who has access to taxpayer dollars so that those funds can be redirected back to the family bank account. Oh, nice. Say, speaking of the surname Masters, we were also tipped off about someone named Brendan Masters. Brendan works at 2 Catholic schools in the region. Say, do you think this particular Masters has any connection to the aforementioned Fred Masters and Kathy Doherty Masters? Is the Pope Catholic? Yes, Brendan happens to be the son of Fred and Kathy. Now, it is not inappropriate that he works at schools in the region if Mama Bear happens to be a trustee. But what is offside is that Kathy is supposed to recuse herself when it comes to voting on budget items or union negotiations. It's that whole conflict of interest thingy again, you see. And did Kathy recuse herself? Well, what do you know? Apparently she forgot to do so yet again. Funny that. Oh, it gets worse. Our sources allege that Kathy, for some inexplicable reason, has the highest mileage claim of all board trustees. In 2023, she put in a claim for some $1,800 in gas money, which is downright fascinating because she only lives about 10 kilometers away from the school board's headquarters. What is she driving these days? A Sherman tank? Oh, and she was out of the country for about 2 months in 2023. so there was no commuting whatsoever during that time period. But my sources tell me that her mileage claims are about double what they should be. Gee, was this another financial enrichment tip Kathy plucked from husby's whiz-bang lessons on mastering money? Or do you think she simply forgot to follow the rules again? Or maybe she was just hoping that nobody would notice.
I would have gotten away with it too, if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
But the jig is up for Team Masters. That's because Kathy's fellow trustees have levied sanctions against her for violating the Code of Conduct rule. Amazingly, the nitty-gritty vis-a-vis the precise violation of that Code of Conduct rule was never specified. Unfortunately, that's simply the non-transparent way in which school boards function in Ontario these days, even though these boards are taxpayer-funded. However, our sources point out that the Code of Conduct violation had everything to do with those conflict of interest allegations. By the way, on the issue of a lack of transparency, it would be jolly good if we could see a line item on the board's budget showing the money that was directed to Fred Masters. But get this, that payola is hidden in that nebulous category known as administration, which totaled precisely $12,064,374 in 2024. This lump sum is apparently the place where the board head honchos like to, cloak funding for all of their pet projects they don't want constituents to be aware of. The lack of transparency, especially given that school boards are taxpayer funded, is nothing short of shocking, really. Indeed, to be clear about the lack of transparency, nobody could even attend those meetings since it was part of triple in-camera meetings on December 12th and 19th, and that only trustees were present. Even so, the Code of Conduct policy as it pertains to trustee prohibitions is the following, quote, several prohibited actions, including using resources for non-board business, the disclosure and use of confidential information, and accepting gifts that could influence a board member's duties, end quote. But back to Doherty Masters, I wish I could have attended the actual board meeting in which Kathy was disciplined, but alas, I'm still serving a 2-year trespass penalty. More on that later. The good news is that Doherty Masters is now banned from attending meetings until June 30th. Ooh, how does it feel, Kathy? Oh, and Doherty Masters also won't be allowed to sit on the audit committee, nor the Catholic Parent Involvement Committee, nor the Governance Committee until November 15th, 2026. Ouch. And in addition to her various suspensions, Doherty Masters is required to write a letter of apology to the board.
Shame.
Oh, that's gotta hurt. By the way, regarding my 2-year trespass notice, no, folks, I did not break into the Waterloo Catholic District School Board headquarters, nor any of its schools. But in 2023, I merely asked some tough questions directed at the hopelessly woke Director of Education, Tyrone Dowling. And apparently, impolite queries is tantamount to an act of trespass. And just like that, I was put in the penalty box for 2 years. Can you believe the entitlement of the likes of Dowling? And my questions were regarding yet another woke joke trustee who used to go by the name of Wendy Ashby. You see, Ashby made international news in 2023 for all of the wrong reasons. She was the kook who stated the following on social media, quote, "The most dangerous creature on the planet is the white Christian male. They're a threat to everyone who is not them, end quote. Wow, talk about an unassisted triple play. Her statement is equal parts racist, sexist, and anti-Christian. And she slanders a white male Christian as being a creature? Really? Thankfully, Wendy Ashby eventually stepped down due to public pressure. That pressure had to come from the public, you see, because Tyrone Dowling didn't see anything wrong with having such a racist sexist on the school board, which tells you all you need to know about the ideology that Dowling subscribes to. By the way, Wendy Ashby now goes by the name of Wendy Jacqueline. Nice try. Sorry, darling. I'm sure you found out by now that the internet is forever. Now, I've reached out several times to Kathy and Fred Masters, leaving them detailed voicemail messages, but it's always radio silence. Then again, in fairness, we were calling long distance. Maybe one of the tips promoted in lessons on mastering money is this: don't return long distance phone calls to avoid getting dinged with long distance phone charges. And get this, the news only gets better when it comes to much needed change at the scandal-plagued Waterloo Catholic District School Board. Because not only is Wendy Ashby gone, and not only has Kathy Doherty Masters been censured, but just the other day, Tyrone Dowling tendered his resignation as well. Hey, it's Christmas in February in Waterloo region. Do you think now that the information regarding Kathy is finally getting some media exposure, that she too will do the right thing and step down? Well, stay tuned. Indeed, the way I see it, if Doherty Masters resigns or is somehow forced out by those trustees on the board who actually care about Catholic education, well, that would be win-win for both taxpayers and Kathy alike. Which is to say, taxpayers would be unburdened by an unethical trustee. Meanwhile, Kathy would have a ton of free time on her hands that will give her and hubby Fred Masters an opportunity to co-write a sequel to Lessons on Mastering Money. Hey, Kathy and Freddie, I think I have the perfect title for this opus in the making. How about Masters of Disaster? Hey folks, maybe investigative journalism, when it comes to the mainstream media, it's going the way of the dinosaur. We don't think it should. In fact, Rebel News is always investigating, but we need your help. Unlike the mainstream media, we do not get a nickel of Justin Trudeau's media slush fund money. Please, if you can, reach out to rebelinvestigates.com. That's rebelinvestigates.com. And if you're able to, kindly make a donation so we can continue our investigative journalism.